Thank you very much for joining me here on the show. And we are also joined by Amy Gallagher, who has joined us on the panel, because we're going to talk now about this report by MPs and peers saying that to send people to Rwanda is completely incompatible, Amy, with Britain's obligations under national treaties or obligations under the ECHR and other treaties. Should we be surprised that parliamentarians, many of whom we said they oppose this anyway, have come up with this report criticising the government's policy?
No, it's not surprising. I mean, they do have a valid point. I mean, the whole point of the initial Rwanda Bill was to house asylum seekers in Rwanda while their claim was being assessed here. And that would act as two things. It would act as a deterrent, but it would also mean that resources such as housing weren't being used up here. Now, the issue with that was that the courts and the lawyers intervened and essentially said that if you house people in Rwanda, they are at risk of refoulement. In other words, that Rwanda would just simply send them back to the country that they're seeking asylum from, and that would go against the human rights. So this new bill essentially says that the courts are not allowed to do that. That the courts are not allowed to intervene and find the asylum seekers at risk of refoulement. Now, the issue of that is, of course, the whole point of a court of law is to look at all the evidence and to come to their own conclusion, independent of Parliament. And you really shouldn't be having somebody determining the outcome prior to the court case or to the tribunal.
Can we have any faith in the Supreme Court? Because in their judgment, and I read their judgment, in their judgment on the previous Rwanda Bill, they relied very heavily on evidence given by the UNHCR in relation to the processing of refugees in Rwanda. There are currently 135,000 UN refugees currently housed in Rwanda under their control. So how can they have it both ways? So it's okay for them to process refugees and ultimately settle refugees in Rwanda, but it's not okay for Britain. How can that be right?
Well, this is the broader issue with these international laws and laws like the ECHR. I mean, they were set up in the 1950s and things have changed quite significantly since then. So, I mean, we knew at the time when they were set up that there was a very clear idea of what it meant to be seeking asylum, that you were in a war zone and you were fleeing, imminent death, I guess. Unfortunately, there's been, over the last 50, 70 years, the judiciary has become very activist, it's become very political, and it is now that the definition of seeking asylum or fleeing from persecution has broadened. So people are simply claiming now, we have a situation where people can claim that because they're Christian or because they're gay, which are things that you can just say you are, you don't have to prove, that you are at risk of persecution from a particular country.
Amy, is there any such thing as an asylum seeker from France? Are they fleeing persecution in France?
Well, this is the issue. I mean, of course, yeah, France is a very civilised country.
Well, not that civilised, but, it's all right.
Well, the issue is, I mean, that we live in a very digital age and information spreads very quickly, and asylum seekers quickly learn that actually their asylum claim is 3 times more likely to be accepted in the UK than it is in France. Yeah. And that's the motivation and the incentive for
And we also
here.
learned that 40 of the residents of the Bibi Stockholm barge have had a road to Damascus moment. They're converted to Christianity. That seems to be the latest ruse. That Bibi Stockholm barge is probably responsible for more conversions than Noah and his ark, isn't it? Is that the latest loophole they're exploiting? Yes,
very much so. I mean, we know that Christianity is in decline in this country, and the church is having a real issue with getting a congregation. So I suspect when they have people turning up suddenly saying that they're Christian, they lap it up and welcome them with open arms. But the issue is that there are people that are simply gaming the system. And it's not clear how the Home Office and the civil service and the courts are determining how a person's proving whether they're Christian or not. And we know very much so as well that the Church of England has taken a rather political turn. So, for example, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, has said himself that he finds the Rwanda policy goes against the nature of God. Now, I don't know how he knows God's opinion on a specific Tory policy, but what we do know is that the Church of England is very much anti this policy and pro-asylum seekers, which is fine if you're helping someone who's genuinely in need, but we do know that there are people who have a criminal background who are gaming the system, which we've seen recently in this recent attack in Clapham Common with a criminal who threw acid in the face of a woman and was granted asylum because he simply claimed to be a Christian, despite the fact he was very overtly living a very Muslim life and still eating halal meat and so on.
Well, Amy, I think this is the latest loop. Look, last question. 120 people crossed the channel yesterday. Is there any? Let's say the government can get this Rwanda policy through the House of Commons. I voted for it. In fact, I voted to tough it up. I don't think it goes far enough. If they get it through, is it going to work? Are we going to see numbers falling to the wonderful level of 299 migrants in 2018 when Claire was in the Home Office doing sterling work as a Home Office advisor? Is it going to work, or is anything going to work, or is this just the new reality we've got to live with?
It's very difficult to say. I mean, at first, as you say, it's got to get through, and it's not obvious that it will. But if it does, there may well be more loopholes that people can get through to claim that they're unsafe. So this is the issue. Of course, asylums, how we manage asylum seekers is a very serious issue. But the broader issue going on is that we do also have 700,000 immigrants coming into this country legally, and that's much as big of an issue as the asylum seeker issue.
Big issue.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all this to-ing and fro-ing with this Rwanda is actually very much a distraction from this bigger, broader cultural issue that we're facing.
Well, let me bring... Is this going to work? I mean, I've asked you once. You said you don't really know, but people do want to know at home. Do you think it's going to work?
I mean, it might do. I mean, I don't know that it will, as I say, I don't know that it will get through. And in terms of a deterrent, I mean, the current Home Office website says very clearly that if you come here seeking asylum, you will be paid £45 a week and you'll be given accommodation. Now, that doesn't feel like a deterrent to me. So I think just this bill on itself, in and of itself, won't necessarily be a deterrent because there is a broader cultural...
so why is that? So in France, they only house fewer than 50% of the migrants. That's why we see these camps. Question whether people in Britain would think it was acceptable to have a camp like the jungle that we hear about in Calais and other areas around the French coast. Why does Britain give everyone a house or a hotel room or put them on the baby Stockholm barge? Why do we do it?
Well, it's a good question. If we look at Europe just generally, we see that asylum claims are going down, and it's only in Britain that claims are going up. So we are seen as the soft touch of Europe that you can come to, and you will be given... you will be given asylum and you will be given a place to stay while your claim is being processed in a way that you might not possibly be given in other European countries. And while this all to-ing and fro-ing with Rwanda is going on, people are aware of the reality on the ground is that Britain is the place to go. And it's a waste of our resources. More and more people are going to come until the incentive is taken away not to. Then they will
that's what the government's banking on, isn't it? Whether you think Rwanda will work or not, the big bet the government's made is that it will discourage people from crossing the channel if they think they may end up in Rwanda.